It is the Savage Nation. Anything but politics today. Well, almost anything but politics. There is so much propaganda out there about the benefits of the corporations repatriating offshore profits that I'm going to talk about that just briefly. Because the big corporations are the big winners of the new Goldman Sachs tax plan that was just proposed by Mr. Mnuchin. And, of course, Pfizer, Merck, Hewlett-Packard will definitely do very well indeed. So will Google, so will Verizon. And you're thinking, wow, boy, the new tax plan says they can bring back all their overseas profits at a low taxation, a one-time tax holiday, and the economy is going to benefit. You're going to get a better job. Your children will get new braces. Your wife will get new shoes. I'll give you a little truth on that in a few minutes, and you can judge for yourself when I give you the history of when this was done before. So you could listen to all the Margos in the radio business who tell you it's the greatest thing in the world and it's going to boost the economy. It's actually going to boost the corporations, which unto itself is not a bad thing, but it's not going to benefit you one iota, so far as I can tell. I'm also going to talk about marijuana horror stories because many of you are mistakenly thinking that marijuana is natural. It's an herb like tea or coffee, and it's good for you because it's grown on the earth. Well, that shows the absolute abject ignorance of people who think that because it's natural, it's good for you. I can list at least 50 plants that are natural that can kill you. But I won't bother with that. I'll just tell you that marijuana is toxic for many individuals. For stupid people, marijuana is probably beneficial. For idiots who have the brains the equivalent of a one-string banjo, marijuana might resonate a little bit on that one-string banjo. But for those people who are blessed with great minds, or even averagely good minds, marijuana is one of the most destructive substances you can ingest into your body. That's why it used to be called dope, because it makes you into such. And I'm going to ask you about marijuana horror stories. Many of you have been conned into thinking that you should eat a brownie with a marijuana this or marijuana, and you've wound up in emergency rooms. Ask the doctors of what's going on. I'll also explain to you the difference between marijuana, meaning cannabis sativa, cannabis indica, and you'll come to understand the danger you may be putting yourself in. Then I'm going to talk about a Johns Hopkins psychiatrist who says transgender is a mental disorder and sex change is biologically impossible. And he's the real McCoy. He's the former psychiatrist-in-chief of Johns Hopkins. He is the current Distinguished Service Professor of Psychiatry. I'm sure he will be attacked roundly by the PC crowd to lead you to believe that transgenderism is normal. Well, he's confirming what all of us know to be true. Transgender is a mental disorder and sex change is biologically impossible. Thank you, Dr. McHugh, for trying to bring common sense and science into an impossibly difficult subject. And then I'm going to talk about this. Are you a housekeeper or a valet to the rich? I saw in the newspaper this morning that a prominent Upper East Side, that's New York, not everyone knows what East Side means, a prominent Upper East Side New York City couple is looking for two people to cook, clean, and run errands for them for $150,000 for the two of them, and to oversee cooking, cleaning, childcare, and construction of their second home. The prominent Upper East Side couple is looking for a team of two workers to act as gatekeepers to the principals, ensuring all aspects of the home are adequately operating at all times. And I'm going to read to you the full job description below. I personally, when I was poor, wouldn't have taken a job like this for $1 million a year. You got to be insane to take a job like this. But I'm going to ask you, are you a housekeeper or a valet to the rich? You have any confessions to make of, without names now, I don't want the names. How about confessions of housekeepers and valets to the rich? How's that one? Managing and providing full-time care of the family's residents. Okay. Museum quality cleaning throughout the home. Don't tell that to housekeepers I know. They've never been in the museum, so how can they give you museum quality cleaning? With attention to bedrooms, special surfaces, and bathrooms. Okay. Full laundry duties, washing, ironing, steaming, closet organization, managing garments. Well, you know, this couple sounds like they're trying to rip someone off because usually if you hire a house manager, they don't also do laundry. Preparing fresh and healthy breakfast, lunch, and dinner. adhering to all dietary restrictions and requests. That should be an insane asylum right there. This one's vegan, that one's vegan, that one's schmegan, that one's a meat eater, that one's an anti-meat eater, that one eats monkey flesh. But usually rich people don't make you cook if you're going to also clean and do the laundry. They have a chef, so this is a ripoff. Formal service and meal prep upon request for luncheons, dinner parties, including table setup, floral arrangements, bartending, wine pouring and pairing, and guest greeting and socialization. How can anyone know how to do all of that? Wait, they also want you to do personal shopping, running errands, stock procurement, and special requests, whatever that may mean. Heavy organizations throughout the home, including pantries, kitchen, closets, ability to work in tandem, and oversee vendors, contractors, and additional domestic staff. Knowledge and ability to operate smart home systems, Lutron, Crestron, Kaleidoscope. Oh, don't get me started with Crestron. Driving the principals as requested to and from appointments, errands, meetings, any and all other duties or requests related to the needs of the principals and household. I don't know what the hours are. I don't see how you can do all these jobs, but they're offering a $150,000 salary for two people to live in with them, a so-called domestic couple, to do all of these things for $150,000 for the two people. So I will ask you, are you a housekeeper or valet to the wealthy? Any horror stories? I will ask you about medical marijuana horror stories as well. I think that's interesting. And if that's not enough for you, I will also describe to you why the GOP tax plan to repatriate offshore profits may be the greatest scam ever foisted upon the conservative radio audience, who has absolutely no ability to distinguish between one thing and another. In fact, if you were told that Donald Trump was to institute a Marxist plan, you would say it's a good plan, because you heard it was a good plan from people who want something from Donald Trump. Well, I'd rather look at the reality of it rather than the falsehoods of what you may think are the realities. Pardon me, I just ate a date. I shouldn't have. I'm not from the Middle East. Once in a while I eat a date and have a cup of coffee, which you're going to have now. And the phone number is 855-407-282, 855-400-SAVAGE. You should get the newsletter. It's free from michaelsavage.com. 2-3 times a week it arrives in your inbox with an interesting story, tale, picture of Teddy, picture of me, I don't know, whatever. And it'll be fun for you. Just go on michaelsavage.com to do that. Anthony wants to kick off the ball today on the show. I'm actually feeling quite good because I feel holiday-ish. I'm sitting here at my broadcast desk somewhere in the environs of San Francisco. And again, on my desk, I have a little model car about 4 inches long of a Volkswagen 6-window hippie bus with peace and love signs written on it and a surfboard on the roof. And I keep these models to remind me that life can be much simpler and was much simpler and should be much simpler, and that I don't have to agonize every second of the day over world affairs, even though I've been doing so since I'm 5 years old. In fact, when the elders of the crowd used to meet and talk about the boys, that's how it was done in those days, they'd all get together, all the men, in that little Bronx apartment building, and the boys would hang around. We'd be out in the street playing. The men I know would talk about the boys. This one he thinks would be a good at that. That one will be good at that. They were always talking with each other about what their sons would be good at. They all looked at me and they said, I think he's the kind of kid who would be a good lawyer. Oh, God, was I never going to be a good lawyer. No, I don't put down lawyers. I think that most people know what I think of lawyers. I think they use the wisdom of the ages and the wisdom of the law to screw people. And so it's something I never wanted to go in. Moreover, professions like that require memory, and trickery. I'm more of a right-brain creative person, even though I can do left brain quite well. So, no, that's not what I wanted to be. No one knew what a talk show host was or a writer, never heard of it. So the elders of the tribe couldn't say, hey, that little Michael would be a good writer. Little did they know. Or that little Michael would be a good broadcaster. They didn't know what that was, not in that circle. They were all immigrants by and large. So here we are so many years later, so many administrations later, so many days later, so many months later, so many years later, and life goes on. And that's what we're going to talk about, are these topics. Again, I open the lines up to all of these topics, 855-400-7282. We're talking about repatriating if you want to do politics, the GOP tax plan to repatriate offshore profits is a scam. Just a scam, a complete scam. And there is a historical example from this. The experience from the 2004 tax holiday, I'll just cut to the chase, suggests that most of this money will be distributed to shareholders not invested in U.S. business assets, says Edward Kleinbard, professor at the University of Southern California's Gould School of Law. This was done. A one-time tax holiday on overseas profits generated little economic oomph 13 years ago. The 2004 American Jobs Creation Act temporarily cut taxes on repatriated profits to 5.25% from 35%. About 9,700 companies took advantage of the tax break, and they brought back $312 billion, right? And what happened? Well, unfortunately, the tax holiday did not increase domestic investment or employment, according to a 2011 Congressional Research Service report. So you can believe what you want to believe. You can believe all of the profits, false profits, real profits, con men that you want. Let's wait and see, but I'm not so sure this is going to benefit us. Also, marijuana horror stories, especially those of you who have been hooked into thinking that you should try a chewy, a medical marijuana chewy, and wound up in an emergency room, half out of your mind, because you were sold a bill of goods. And again, we're talking about the housekeeper story. A housekeeping couple that would do all those things for $150,000 a year. You are virtual slaves. And by the way, what are the hours of a job like that? Do they have any hours? I really wonder, do they have any hours? This is the Savage Nation. Be here or be nowhere. It is the Savage Nation. See, I shouldn't have asked for this song because my mind is going to want to tell you New York childhood stories, and you're not going to want to hear them. No, Mike, tell us that, Doc, please. All we want to hear is about your childhood. We hate the country. We hate life today. There's no life left. Please tell us your... I don't want to talk about Come Softly to Me. I just think of a 1959 Chevy with a wheel owned by a guy who became a famous rock and roll star. Then he became a nothing. I don't know. 7th grade. So I did something on the Twitter thing. I said, Savage poll on Trump's first year is in. He rates it A- according to big polling sample. And I put it on michaelsavage.com. So somebody writes, no thanks to you, Savage. Ever since he became the president, you're critical of him. I hope you come to your sense soon and support him again. So I wrote, if you want a false talker, there are plenty of choices, especially those who supported anyone but Trump while I was behind them for over a year. Then Drew Mackel writes, polling sample completely made up of conspiracy theorists, far-right, conservative, evangelical, Christian Republicans, I'd say. So I answered him, and I said, as stated by a far-left, anti-American, Marxist, anti-God, Christian-hating destructionist. New word, destructionist. You'll hear it stolen within minutes. So he answers me, he says, you're funny. I'm not a Marxist, extreme left, or anti-American, but mostly definitely anti-Trump and not a fan of organized religion in general. Let me tell you, it's an honor to be anger tweeted by you, Dr. Savage, in a deep voice. Thanks, Drew. I'm glad you like being honor tweeted. I never heard of anger tweeted. I'm learning new things every day. And then I get attacked by those who listen to talk shows by people who don't know the first thing about business. And I said, if the past is an example, the last time this benefit was granted, corporations invested very little in new factories and jobs. What do you want me to do? Tell you that it didn't happen and it's going to change? So, okay, what can I say to you? I put it up there and I got answers and you got your answers. Now we'll take some callers on all the topics that we are talking about. And I'm having a good time today. Medical marijuana horror stories. Would you take that job for $150,000 a year? Repatriation of corporate dollars. What will actually happen? WABC, Anthony. Let's do it 30 seconds or less. Go ahead, Anthony.
Thank you, Doctor. I have a lot of health conditions and was taking opiates, and they decided to try me on medical marijuana. It's been the worst thing I ever did in my life. It's like being in a stupor, and they're telling me that, well,
the next thing you know, you think Hillary Clinton won the election.
Yeah, that's all I need. Yeah, like I'm skiing with Harry Truman. But thing
No. Keep ingesting chewies of medical marijuana. The next thing you know, you'll be chanting with Antifa and believing UFOs exist.
not only that, it's
I'm sending you a copy of God, Faith, and Reason, okay? Stick to the basics. It's gotten mankind through the planet for the last 5,000 years. I think it'll work for a few months. You know what I mean? We don't have to throw everything out in the garbage. 30 seconds or less. Next one. Next one. Anthony didn't like it. No, I don't know. Has medical card, enables data. Madeline on KSFO line 9. What's on your mind?
Oh, hi there. I'm so glad that you took my call. I am speaking from my car because, unfortunately, I'm homeless. And I know how you feel about the homeless people, but this is in regards to a very, very brutal divorce. And if it weren't for, on 4/20/2013, my ability to obtain a medical cannabis card, I can't begin to tell you that I don't think that I would be here today.
Well, I'm glad to hear it. I am glad to hear that it has worked for you, but I will repeat my main point. Medical marijuana is one of the greatest scams ever foisted upon humankind. Marijuana is one of the most dangerous of all drugs, and many people are extremely destructively reactive to it. You may not be one of them, Madeline, but I'm sending you a Christmas gift of God, Faith, and Reason. What a voice, huh? The Platters. Love it. Still moves me. It's a beautiful song. Geometry, Crew Cut, Jamaica High School, dozing off in class, staring at ponytails. Welcome back to the program. It is an amazing thing to watch the world go round like a merry-go-round. Only 4 shopping days left to purchase God, Faith, and Reason for Christmas. So get your butt down to a bookstore. Let's go to some of the callers. Glenn on WABC. Is anyone else out there happy? Why do I feel giddy today? Could be the date that I just had and the coffee. I know that's an ambiguous statement. It's a non-binary statement. I just had a great date and a cup of coffee. Glenn on WABC, welcome to the program. Go ahead, Glenn. What's up?
I'm calling because with the transgender issue, and I'll mention to you that I am extremely heterosexual.
I'm sorry to hear it.
Yeah, right. It's the problem. But anyway, my son is transgender. His gender identity is non-binary. I don't know if you know what that is. It was something new for me to have to learn.
So it's an individual, as I know it, who does not identify as a male or a female. Is that what you say?
Yes.
So, hold on. I'm not going to ridicule you or your son, but I just want to go back to Dr. Paul McHugh, who's the former psychiatrist in chief at Johns Hopkins, who said that transgender is a mental disorder and sex change is biologically impossible. What does this mean then?
You know, I really don't know if it's a mental disorder or if it's not. I don't really think anybody knows.
Well, let me, Glenn, how old is your child?
He is 21 now.
In his childhood, was he ever attracted to boys or girls?
He is attracted to boys now, so I guess he could also be classified as gay because he is male.
But so let's say when he was younger, was he attracted to girls?
You know, it was hard to say. We always had a little inkling that there might be something a little bit strange, but I know I've seen him. He was kissing girls when he was a little boy, maybe like 2nd or 3rd grade.
So, what do you think steered him in this direction?
Well, he says that his earliest memories when he was maybe 10 or 11. He said at that point he started being attracted to boys. He started having more of an attraction to boys than girls, but he also says he didn't feel like a boy.
Did you tell him it was right or wrong, those feelings? Did you tell him, well, wait a minute now, you're a boy and you should not wait, just hold on. When he started to say that to you, did you say, look, Johnny, I understand what you think you're feeling, but you're a boy and you should be attracted to girls. Did you ever try that?
Well, I didn't know about this till he was about 18 or 19.
So and what you're saying is whatever, you'll accept him as he is, and I understand that. That's what a parent should do. But I think there's a point at which you can steer a child into a sexual format or a sexual identity. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I wish you were right, to be honest with you. I never tried to steer him in one way or another. He has cried in my arms, and he said, "Dad, why can't I just be like you?" Because it's
okay, that's look, it's very touching, and I'm not going to say like a stupid idiot and say, you should have done this and you should have done that. What it is just accept him as a gay boy. I understand that. But I am quoting an article from a doctor who's really up there who said that transgender is a mental disorder.
It could be.
And wait a minute, hold on. Doesn't mean that you should hurt the mentally disordered person.
Right, I agree with you totally.
Doesn't mean you should hurt them or yell at them. But on the other hand, the media is doing children no favor by treating the confusion of so many people as perfectly normal. Maybe these children need treatment and prevention.
You know what? I think if there was something that they could find.
You sound like an extremely kind person, by the way, and very understanding. I'll tell you that. Speaking with you, I would normally think that a father would get defensive and tell me to go to hell, frankly, for even taking this position. But you're an extremely nice person, Glenn.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Look, it was very difficult for me to accept, but he's a wonderful kid.
I'm sure he is.
Yeah, and I just, want the best for him. I worry all the time.
Well, I must say that the distinguished service professor of psychiatry who made this statement, saying that transgenderism is a mental disorder that merits treatment, and that sex change is biologically impossible, and that people who promote sexual reassignment surgery are collaborating with and promoting a mental disorder, he is somebody to consider as well in making these decisions. And I am not here to tell you what decision to make. All I will say is that many of the children who fall into this category wind up doing very bad things to themselves in time, and you can only blame that on who? On the people who don't accept them? That's easy to do. So you got to be very careful in what you support and what you don't support. So, Glenn, there's no easy answer to this. Everyone's children are sacred to them, especially thoughtful people. They don't try to beat something out of somebody or beat something into somebody. I mean, that's a fact of reality. And if I had a child who was that way, I probably would have done what you did, which is accept him 100%. But I didn't. You know what I'm saying? I didn't. I would have, though. I would have accepted that child just as you do. So, God bless you. I'm sending you God, faith, and reason. Maybe it'll give you something interesting to look at. But why does God do this to us? If there is a God in heaven, why would he make children suffer like this with gender confusion of this level? What is it? Is it the gestation period during which time the mother was exposed to chemicals? Is it inherently in the nature of the child? Is it nature versus nurture? Are we even allowed to discuss this anymore without being called Nazis or fascists? Dr. McHugh said that studies show between 70% and 80% of children who express transgender feelings spontaneously lose those feelings over time. And for those who had sexual reassignment surgery, most said they were satisfied with the operation, quote, but their subsequent psychosocial adjustments were no better than those who didn't have the surgery. Don't think it's a cakewalk. You got a 60-year-old man who suddenly decides he wants to wear a dress and high heels and cut his schmendrick off, and he's going to be happy now? The world's 50% women. He wants to be one of them. Ask the women. Ask the 50% of the planet if they're happy every minute. Where does he get the idea that if he becomes the woman within, he's going to be a happy person? How does that even enter his mind other than through brainwashing? By logic, he should understand that there's no road through life that's a guarantee. That's number one. You want Doc Savage to give you a little advice? Give me a room of 20 people in this position, and I'll sit down and talk to them. And here's what I would say, okay, here's what it is. I'm not here to judge you. But here's what's happening. Don't assume that if you feel there's a woman within and you become a woman at age 40, 50, 60, you're going to live in nirvana, because you're not. You're going to be the same person, only this time you're going to be taking hormone shots the rest of your life, and you're going to look in the mirror and you're going to look like an ugly woman. So you think very carefully. If you're gay, but stop already with twisting your body around. And I've said for years the doctors who do this are the ones who are causing the harm. They're doing it for profit, not to help anybody. That's not to say that if a person has feelings toward the same sex, that is something that should be condemned. I'm not going to condemn it because I don't have those problems. I don't know what it's like to have that problem every second of your life and have to make a decision in that regard. There's a third way also. The third way is don't have sex at all. Where is it written? Tell me where it's written you're supposed to have sex every minute like a mink in heat. Where? Where did that come from? If you have gender dysphoria, can't you make the third choice of not having sex at all? Become celibate? Where did that get lost in the shuffle? Millions of priests through time have been celibate. It hasn't killed them. Now, don't make this the bad joke that, so they molest boys. That's about 3% of the priesthood. So let's not generalize. That's overgeneralizing, and that's a danger to everybody. But you can become celibate. You won't die. Or if you want to be a hedonist, that's your decision. Many people have decided hedonism is the right road of life. Some want to be Epicureans. Some want to be hedonists. They follow hedonism or Epicureanism. There are many ways through life. Others practice a form of Puritanism. They don't enjoy food. They don't enjoy drink. They don't enjoy sex. They enjoy nothing but pain. They would be called Republicans. I'm joking. No, that's what the liberals would think. Okay, so I didn't really want to get into this whole thing. I just thought it would come up. I mean, what does God think about this whole subject? I wonder. Well, I'll give you an answer from one man's opinion since it popped up on my radio show. God, I'm going to talk to God now. Imaginary conversation with God about transgenderism. God, why did you make people like this if the world you create is perfect? Why? God's answer is, that's for them to figure out. I mean, what are they being punished for some reason? I don't know the answer. All right, so look, we're going to go back to the other stuff we can have some control over, the medical marijuana nonsense. This is not to say that components of cannabis sativa are not medically active and useful. They are. However, most of the industry, of the medical marijuana industry, is given over to getting high, only getting high, under the guise of performing some kind of medical service. It's not true, just not true. And if you find a component of the marijuana plant that is conducive towards your health, then try to find an isolate of the cannabis plant that contains that alkaloid and leave out the psychoactive components because they're not necessarily good for you. And we'll talk about that at another time. I have a background in chemistry, phytochemistry, plant chemistry, medicinal plants. I spent years studying these things. It doesn't make me the world's expert, but I know a lot about it. And I also know about all the people who say, well, I smoke marijuana, but it's not bad for me because it's natural. That's the voice of an ignoramus. Curare is also natural. It can kill you. I can name many, many other toxicants that occur naturally in plants. So when you say it's natural, you don't know what you're talking about. Natural doesn't mean it's good. What does natural mean? It's natural. I smoke it because it's natural. As I said, there are a lot of poisons that are quite natural. Ricin, for example, the most toxic plant poison on earth. More toxic than anything man has ever created that I know of. Ricin, found in a little castor bean. Just one infinitesimal droplet of it can kill you. It's natural, isn't it? Very natural. How about the oleander plant? Remember when I first moved to Hawaii, I loved it because the plants were so beautiful, all those white flowers. And I was warned by locals, don't ever touch those plants. I said, why? Well, during World War II, when boys from the U.S. mainland were sent to Hawaii, they broke the stems off those plants. They didn't know what they were. They didn't know the oleander was poisonous. And they roasted hot dogs with the stem, and they died. Because the white sap contained inside those stems is highly toxic. But they're natural, aren't they? Well, time is running out, and it's naturally time for me to take a break. Welcome back to the Savage Nation. You've heard me talk about the neck pain that Allison dealt with for over 5 years. Well, she said she tried everything. She told me that Relief Factor was the only thing that helped her. And again, it's why I'm suggesting you go to ReliefFactor.com if it's hard for you to take a long walk because of knee, back, or foot pain, or getting out of bed is even difficult. Getting out of a chair or sewing a needlepoint might be painful as well. Simply typing at your desk can be painful. and you're probably sick of it. I've already told you I've talked with the owners of Relief Factor. I know a great deal about the 4 ingredients in Relief Factor. I've studied and even written about the ingredients and how they can help lower your pain. They're anti-inflammatories, which is why if you're in pain, I think you should give this a shot. Give it a try. The Relief Factor 3-week Quick Start is only $19.95. And remember, nearly 80% of people who do order the Quick Start, they go back and order it again. What does that tell you? It must tell you something. So go to ReliefFactor.com, ReliefFactor.com, ReliefFactor.com. Give it a shot. Nothing to lose. 855-487-2882. Where's this guy who likes the marijuana stuff? Okay. Dave on KSFO, line 2. Go ahead, please.
Hi, Dr. Savage. The cannabinoids in marijuana have been proven to help people relieve their pain and suffering from ADD, all types of other medical conditions.
Well, sure. It slows your mind down sufficiently that you could stare at your navel or your toenail and think that you're looking at the universe. Like, gee, that's a beautiful toenail I have there. Wow. Let me run my finger through my toe and smell it. That smells good. I'll bet the other toe would smell good, too. Sure, it helps you with ADD. You forget everything else. You're focusing on your toe and the lint between your toes.
I have a very good memory, Dr. Savage. I'm a very intelligent, educated person.
So, So which cannabinoid are you... Hold it, sir. Which cannabinoid are you recommending?
The cannabinoids from the THC in the marijuana plant.
So you're arguing that it is the part that gets you high that you like, not the medical ones, but the ones that get you high.
But no, I'm talking about how it's medically inclined to help people who suffer from...
No, but you're going around the subject. A cannabinoid is not a reference to a single alkaloid. There are numerous alkaloids when you say cannabinoid, and I am saying to you that there are medicinally active cannabinoids, but THC is not one of them. THC is the one that causes the psychoactive reactions, meaning getting high. So you're getting high or you're treating a medical condition?
No, they take the THC out of the chemistry part of the...
That's what I just asked you. So you are taking allegedly a form of marijuana that has no THC in it. Is that what you're saying?
Right. It's just the CBD.
All right. I understand that. That sounds like a miraculous solution to the problem. However, I have studied this, and I believe that even when you're getting other cannabinoids, there are residuals of the THC, so you're not getting any high from it at all?
No, you don't get high from it.
Good. All right. Well, you know what? Then you must have a medicinally accurate manufacturer there, because most of these guys are shysters working out of garages somewhere in Sonoma County or in Mendocino. You take your life in your hands, like pills made in India. It is the Savage Nation. We are talking about... Oh, let's hear the next refrain. Just for a minute. Bring me back to our reality here. Before I thought about politics. Anyway, convertibles, Florida, sun. We'll come back to the topics that I introduced in the last hour in a few minutes. Right now, we shift to the media and the changing media landscape. And it is changing rapidly, believe me, with conglomeration, mergers and acquisitions. The media landscape in 2018 will not be the same as it is now. And a man who is very much involved in that media landscape that is changing is Chris Ruddy of Newsmax, a good friend of mine. Chris, welcome to the Savage Nation.
Always great to be on with you, Michael.
You consider it an honor for me to say you're a friend of mine, or you're a little leery of it? Okay, that's your answer. I got it.
It'll just be our secret, all right? We won't let anyone know.
Well, Chris, you're in the news a lot.
I'm very proud. You and I were friends for a long time, even before you went national on your radio show.
I was at Newsmax in the year 2000 as a local host during, if you could believe it, the Clinton election. Would you believe that? Oh, no, that was the Gore election. I think it was Gore.
Right. And we even go back to our North Beach days, hitting those bars and Italian restaurants.
Well, let's leave that too. I didn't even know you lived out here, but okay, I kind of blacked that out. So Chris, you're right in the heart of it all. You are a regular at the president's table. Is that right?
Well, I wouldn't put it that way, but I'm certainly been a friend of the president's and a supporter of his for many years, and I have a lot of respect for him, and I think he's doing a tremendous job that he's not getting the credit for his accomplishments.
Well, the latest poll I ran, people rated him as an A-, so we know the headwaters he's run into. But looking ahead to 2018, Chris, what's happening in the media that's going to change?
Well, this is really interesting. President Trump ran against the consolidation of media power. Remember, that was a line he used. And, of course, he was complaining about CNN merging with AT&T, and that issue has been raised with the Justice Department in their new mega merger. But the real big, bad deal that's going on, I think is a great danger, is the Sinclair Tribune merger, which is going to combine the Sinclair TV stations with the Tribune TV stations, which are in big cities like Los Angeles, Chicago, Channel 11 in New York. And a lot of people like this initially because they know Sinclair is conservative or somewhat conservative. Mm-hmm. And I think Sinclair's good guys, but the president's FCC, under a guy named Ajit Pai, is allowing Sinclair and Tribune to own a network that's going to reach 72% of U.S. homes. Now, this is a earthquake in the media landscape. It's going to be really big trouble and danger for conservatives and Republicans in the years ahead. And the reason is, Michael, it takes people just like 60 seconds to understand this. Reagan put in 1985 an ownership cap on the big networks like NBC and CBS that own local TV stations that reach more than 25% of the United States. Because Reagan knew if NBC and CBS were controlling your local news, Republicans and conservatives would not get a fair shake. Mm-hmm. Donald Trump himself told me the reason he won the election was that the national news didn't control all these local news stations. But his own FCC is now opening the door by approving this merger that will allow NBC and CBS to buy up your local news station. And
but you must have raised this with the president. What has he said to you?
Well, he's not heard a lot about it, interestingly enough. And, you know, the president's got so many things on his plate. He's been dealing with the tax thing, the health care bill, Congress, and North Korea. So I know that everybody thinks, oh, you just mentioned it to the president, he'll handle it. But he's got a lot on his plate. I have raised the issue with him. I've been raising it with members of Congress. Mike Reagan has launched a national petition to protect his father's ownership cap. If you go to the website stopthefccplan.com, stopthefccplan.com, you'll see it's all laid out in the petition.
Well, tell us about Newsmax, though. Obviously, Chris, this is not in the interests of your expansion, and I understand that. Everyone has to look out for themselves. You're expanding rapidly with Newsmax TV. Isn't it true that you are doing something with Comcast?
Well, this rule, this would not impact Newsmax at all, what's going on with the FCC, because we're not in broadcasting stations. We are currently on cable systems. We're on Newsmax TV is now in 50 million cable homes, Michael. We're on DirecTV. We're on Dish. We're on Uverse. We're on Fios. We're hoping to get on Comcast and Spectrum Charter and Cablevision. We're working on that. We don't have any news yet. Obviously, anybody out there that listens to your show that wants Newsmax TV that's in 50 million homes, call your local cable operator on the customer service line. Tell them you want Newsmax TV and getting the stories. I mean, we're covering so much news that even Fox doesn't cover. And it's really important, I think, that there be more conservative voices, and that's why we've been growing so fast.
You know, it's interesting, Chris. If I go to your website, Newsmax.com, which I've gone on since the beginning of my radio show, you were one of the early ones in the business. I'm now writing columns for you 2-3 times a week under the Insiders on the right panel. It says, Michael Savage, the Savage Minute, should there be a statute of limitations for sexual harassment claims? That's one example of articles I'm doing for you, and I really enjoy the exposure on Newsmax, and I'd like to help you in your expansion any way I can, Chris. But getting back to the bigger issue, and the one I think the listeners would like to hear more about, which is Look, you are a very social guy. I know that for 20 years now. You like to go to dinners. You create dinners. You had me to Mar-a-Lago last February when I met the president. That was like a high point in my life. And what is going on socially now down in Florida at Mar-a-Lago? What is it like, Chris?
Well, this whole area of South Florida has people from New York and Washington and the Northeast and all over the country and the world. People come in here. Newsmax just happens to be based in Boca. In my geography, I've lived down here for over almost 20 years now, and I've gotten to know the president a very significant portion of that time, and I'm a member of his club there. So it's a very active time. People are coming together. A lot on the weekends are happening. Florida is really a go-to state because the taxes in blue states like New York and Massachusetts and California.
I know. I may have to move there, Chris. I cannot take the onerous taxes of Jerry Brown anymore.
Well, and the new tax bill is going to penalize people in blue states that make high income.
I know that. My 14% is not going to be deductible anymore for my federal.
And people are here, so it's a great time. And Donald Trump, now in the past, Donald Trump as a private citizen would come to Florida to his mansion, Mar-a-Lago, which is a private club. Every weekend in the winter practically, and he would golf and he would see people in business and private life, and he would have Melania typically, his family, Eric and Don Jr. and Ivanka would be down here with Jared. So it was an opportunity for them to get together and visit with friends and family. I think the president would love to be down here a lot more often. He's been down here as a winter White House. Mar-a-Lago was originally given by Mr. who built the house as a winter White House. You know, they criticized the president for coming here, but other presidents have taken. Ronald Reagan spent one whole year of his presidency out at the ranch in Santa Barbara. John Kennedy, every weekend in the summer, would travel to Hyannisport as president, and many, many times to Palm Beach. So it's not that unusual, and frankly, if the economy is doing well and the country's in good hands, I think the president, more vacations are better.
Well, I'm not going to argue that. I'm a man who's taking a vacation starting Thursday. As a matter of fact, I'm probably going to see you Christmas Eve over a buffet. Isn't that true?
We are getting together. Yes, I believe we're. And is Teddy coming?
Only if he's invited. Do they let four-legged guests in?
I think he'd have to sign the guest book, and he could do a paw print, couldn't he?
I don't know if the Secret Service will permit him in because he has real shaggy long hair. He looks like a hippie.
Oh, you're right. The Secret Service. Does Teddy have a Social Security number?
Yes. It's 1TEDDY.com. He has a website.
Well, you and Janet and everyone's invited. We're going to have a great time. It's a great time.
How is the buffet? Is it still as good as ever down there at Mar-a-Lago?
Well, everything Donald Trump does, he does exceptionally well.
You know, Chris, you want to hear something funny before you go? The first time I went to Mar-a-Lago, I don't know, 10 years ago, I went to a buffet, and I noticed how good the lettuce was. This was long before Donald was even thinking of the presidency. And he came in and I said, Mr. Trump, I got to tell you, I can judge a club by the lettuce. I said, your lettuce is crisp. He said, I know, I select it myself. This man did pay attention to every detail of that club. That's a fact.
Oh, he's very engaged, very hands-on. But he wants everything to be done right. And, you know, even we're seeing here in the White House that, you know, he was a private business guy. He's not a politician. He didn't really know a lot of political people. Over time, he's bringing in better and better people. The administration is running more smoothly. I think this tax bill was a huge turning point for him. I think short-term is going to have some negative political consequences this year. But long-term, it's going to take probably 2 years for the impact of some of the tax benefits to hit. And
I know I'm going to be paying more, so I'm not happy. But overall, maybe the middle class will be happy. Well, Chris, I really appreciate your time on the Savage Nation today, and I do look forward to seeing you for Christmas Eve in Florida. Maybe we'll get a chance to share some iceberg lettuce together.
And tomorrow we have Sean Spicer on Newsmax TV. So tune in. You go to newsmaxtv.com to find us, or call your cable operator and tell them you want Newsmax TV on your cable system.
Chris, who's going to be at the table with us when we're eating?
Oh, it's a confidential private list, but it was cleared by the CIA.
Okay.
The deep state.
You can tell the president that I cut my ponytail. He doesn't have to be embarrassed this year.
Well, he thinks you're extraordinary and always goes out of his way to praise you.
I hope you're telling me the truth. I wouldn't expect otherwise.
Well, you're the first national radio host to support him.
You remember that?
Yeah.
Yep, that's true. And he knows that. You know, Chris, when I was with you last year, I remember running up to him. I did. And I went up and I said, Mr. Trump, I'm Michael Savage. He put his arm around me and he said, I wouldn't be president without this guy, he announced at Mar-a-Lago. That was the greatest moment of my life, I got to tell you.
Well, and it's a true story. I was there.
You were there thanks to you. I embarrassed you by jumping up. Lucky I didn't get beaten up by the Secret Service.
Well, he's, I think, doing a remarkable job, and I think we're going to see things like not only is this economy going to roar in the next few years, but also I think he's dealing with things like Korea, which every president for years had been ignoring. So I think we need to, focus on supporting him in the things that he's doing and as best we can.
And what we should do as two Queens boys, Chris, is make sure at night we go out with night vision and look for Korean subs offshore when I'm down there in Florida with you. Chris Ruddy of Newsmax TV, Newsmax.com. A pleasure. I will look forward to seeing you Christmas Eve in Florida. Thank you very much for being with us.
Same here, Mike.
Savage Nation. Man, I know a very long time. Long time. You know what they say? They don't make new old friends. I'll be right back. Lighten up. It's holiday time out there in the Savage Nation. Even old Doc Savage needs a break every once in a while. I know many of you are freaked out that I'm going to be away starting Thursday for the whole holiday. I've never taken a vacation of this length, but I've decided at the end of 2017, I'm just doing it. I'm just kicking back. Pow Hana, goodbye. Of course, I will occasionally call in just to say hello to my fill-in hosts, keep them in line. No, they're great guys. And I may appear once in a while on Periscope. That's I guess it's an app of its own on Twitter. If there's any huge breaking news, and I hope there isn't, I reserve the right to come back to the show intermittently. I know that nobody wants me to, but I may. Here is an interesting, crazy story. Columbia frat bro posts flyers looking for a formal date and lands a model. Okay. So he's a 28-year-old junior. He needed a date for his frat's winter formal. He's a former Army Ranger, but he wasn't dating anybody because he studies hard. So he takes a picture, he puts it up there, and he describes himself as a photogenic date, and he describes himself as, quote, slightly endowed with a big heart and and PTSD-free, offering a complimentary Uber ride home and lists his Instagram handle. Slightly endowed with a big heart. That's an interesting statement. Most men, would never. Struggling mode, blah, blah, blah. So he got a date with this girl who thought it was cute. And there it was. I guess they're going to get married now. Life ends well for him, I suppose, until who knows. Oh, it's a one-date thing. After a round of drink, the couple hopped into a party bus, blah, blah, blah. Okay, it's a nothing story, but these things go on, office parties, meeting people. I'm surprised people can still date in this day and age without wondering that they're going to go to jail. Let's go back to the other topics, if you want, which is confessions of housekeepers and valets to the rich. And what's the most annoying word or phrase to you? I haven't done that yet. There's a new poll on that. The most annoying phrase or word, according to the new poll, is the word whatever. That's a way of insulting someone. If someone says something, you say whatever. That is considered a real pain in the neck. Whatever. What's the most annoying word or phrase to you? Fake news is one of them. Literally is another one. You know what I mean is the most agitating. And it seems to be broken down by age bracket. Whatever. Whatever. I'll be back. Whatever. Met someone who had your back on your heels. Goody, goody. Goody, goody. You're hot too, mine to you. I love this guy. He's so great. And now, how do you do? It is 34 minutes after the hour. You're listening to one and only Savage Nation. 24 years on the radio on March 24th of 2018. I hope to be here with you. Only 4 shopping days left to purchase God, Faith, and Reason for Christmas. Put God under that tree. That was nice. That sounded good. Very, very mellifluous. I like that. Drug and alcohol deaths at U.S. workplaces soar. Deaths jumped more than 30% in 2016 as the struggle with the deadly opioid epidemic migrates to the workplace. No kidding. How many people around you are stoned? Huh? Maybe everybody? Maybe who's not stoned in this country? Everyone's on something. Whole country's drugged. I guess. Can't be. Our pilots can't be stoned. Let's see which professions can't be stoned. Pilots can't be, more or less. They're about the only profession I would say can't be. They're drug tested. I still think Congress should be drug tested. I think that everyone in Congress should pee in a cup at least once a month. And the results should be published on a I don't know, a website. Because I'm convinced most of them are whacked out of their minds by what they do, the things they say. We don't have to go down the list. You know, most of them are crazed out on drugs. Number of U.S. deaths at work from unintentional drug and alcohol overdose jumped more than that's pretty sad. 217 workers died on the job last year as a result of an unintentional overdose from the non-medical use of drugs or alcohol. I don't know about you. I hate the smell of marijuana. I hate it. I despise it. I can't stand walking in the streets of San Francisco and getting, like a whiff in my face from some drug addict in the gutter. Don't tell me they're not drug addicts. What do you think they're smoking it for everywhere? Because they're drug addicts. Marijuana is one of the most addictive of all drugs. Now, take it from someone who smoked this garbage from the time I was 17 for a number of years, and I hated it, but I was addicted to it, and it was something I had to do because my friends did it. I'm a highly strung, highly intelligent man. It never worked for me. The friends who liked it the most were generally stupid, low IQ people, for whom the sense of creativity, the rush, was a new experience. But if you're a highly creative individual, marijuana will destroy your creativity. You may think the opposite is true, but it's not true. Ask any fine artist. You lose your ability to focus, and you wind up like a baby staring at your own toenail, thinking that that's something significant. Or look at your own handwriting on the marijuana. Just test it for yourself. I have a very fine handwriting ability. I write very beautiful script, cursive writing. And if I look back at my journals from 1969, 1970, 71, and I would smoke, let's say, hashish at the time, I'd start doing like drawings and really bad stuff all over the journal page. And it made no sense. Long, stupid poetry of the kind you'd find in North Beach, California, which they think is Nobel Prize level. And actually, in this day and age, it may be Nobel Prize level. So I'm a total anti-marijuana person, which is not to say that there are not components of cannabis sativa that are not medicinally useful. There are. I'm a phytochemist, for God's sakes. But please don't tell me that getting high is good for you, because it isn't. And that's all I want to say on the issue. I'll give you an example of something that you could do without smoking marijuana. I know it's a trivial, stupid thing, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm a clock nut, and I have a lot of clocks in my houses. I'm obsessed with clocks, because me and time, it's like tick-tock, the hourglass thing. I've always been very cognizant of time. Ever since I've been a little boy, I've always liked clocks. I've always been aware of time. I knew that time waits for no man. I knew that you had to make your mark on life very early on, or nobody would remember you and know you. So I've been struggling since I'm young to make my mark in time. And I did so primarily with my writing, then with my broadcasting, and my record will be whatever it may be. After many books and many broadcasts, I have an archive that will have to be judged by others, not by you. So one of the things I like to do is as I say, is I like antique clocks, but I have cheap clocks as well, like these little battery-operated clocks. Everyone has them. Little battery, right? I have some that I love, and the thing dies after a number of years, and not because the battery ran out, but the movement, the little electric movement that cost a few dollars, died like a person's heart. So for years, I wouldn't throw some of these clocks out because they were gorgeous. I'm looking at one right now. It's a cheap one I bought. I swear to God, this clock for $4 at a garage sale. I know you're saying, what? You really did that? Yes. It has little food items around the side, like each food item, like a carrot is number one, is hour one. An apple is hour two. Tangerine is hour 3. It stopped working 3 years ago, but I couldn't bring myself to trash it. So I kept it, I don't know, in a room somewhere. Then finally, about 2 weeks ago, I went on the internet. I said, how do you fix a battery-powered clock? And little did I know, there's guys out there who sell, like, the parts with a new movement for like $7 or $8. So I got the old nose plier out. I can't say it was easy removing the old movement. It was a challenge for me. And I'm a guy who used to build models as a kid. I was a model plane builder. I'd sit for hours and hours alone building model airplanes. I'd build some out of balsa wood with paper, and I was good at it. And today they'd probably say the child's sick if he builds model airplanes. If he's not playing with himself or ingesting some drug, you better take your child in for therapy. But I don't know. I built model airplanes, and I used to enjoy painting them, putting the decals on. So I'm very good at concentrating. I love to sit at a desk with nobody around, with a really good light on an arm, like an arm light. I like the old arm lights that I could focus with a good pair of magnifying glasses and do things. So I fixed the clock, and it's running. Put the movement in this morning, and it's now 1/4 to the carat. It's about 18. It's 18 minutes to the carat right now. What time is it? 40. Yeah, about 20 minutes to the carat. And I got a kick out of that one. I think tonight I'm going to fix the nautical clock. It looks like the inside of a ship's porthole. I didn't want to throw it out. It was very expensive, but it stopped working, and I thought I had to throw the thing out. But I didn't. I fixed it. I'm not the only one who buys this stuff. There are whole businesses of this thing. The minute hand, the hour hand, it's interesting. There are people who do this stuff. I don't know why I'm telling you. This is just fun. It's one of my little craft hobbies. Don't you think people need these things in their life to does it give your life meaning? I don't know if it gives me meaning. It gives me focus away from something other than the horrors of the world or some moron lifting her skirt on Sunset Boulevard who can't get any attention. So she falls down and her skirt goes over her head, and the New York Post finds a picture of her. That's what passes for news today. I'm tired of the news, after a while. It's just enough already. I'm saturated. Think of what I did this year. I published Trump's War. I made it #1 without any publicity other than the Drudge Report and a few other sites. #1, huge accomplishment. And then God, Faith, and Reason, which is a book actually I've been working on for 20 years. It's sort of a collection of pieces that became very cohesive in the writing of it. That was #11 on the New York Times list, again, with zero publicity and a headwind like you can't believe. A headwind against God. Nobody in the media wants to say God. They're afraid they'll be driven out of the marketplace. Well, somehow it made it. Daily Show, and there it is. That's the year 2017. So I'm still trying to make a mark in time. And explains why I keep working. What is the point of stopping working? There's nothing out there. And there's just like an empty space, frankly. I remember writing a poem. I don't get into waxy stuff. Should I do this now? Maybe I'll do it. I'll go get an old journal maybe after the break and let you peek into the Michael of 1966 when I went to Europe to become a great writer. And, of course, I became a great nothing. And I had to come back to New York City and become a great social worker, which changed my whole life when I saw how people were ripping off the welfare system and they were living better than I was. I mean, now you talk about a turning point. Here I was, a young college graduate with a real degree, making less money than some of the welfare cheats I had to take care of on the Upper West Side. See, the Upper West Side of Manhattan was once gorgeous and elegant. It fell into disrepair, Panic and Needle Park in all those years. And those beautiful buildings on Riverside Drive and whatnot were just welfare hovels. And I, as a young welfare social worker, used to have to go in there, knock on the door, welfare, and I'd go in, and I guess my job was to inspect, so they hated me. I remember coming into apartments. They weren't supposed to have telephones, and apparently if they were getting benefits for a single woman, I'd see a pair of man's shoes on the floor, and I'd say, I wouldn't say anything, actually. I'm afraid they'd kill me. But I remember once a phone rang, and when she wasn't supposed to have a phone, she was supposed to be poor. I said, ma'am, your bed is ringing. Would you please answer your bed? Could you please pick up the pillow? I mean, even then I had a little sarcastic sense of humor. But I woke up when my supervisor at the New York City Department of Welfare, which is what they called it then, Then they had to change it late 70s, late 60s, from the New York Department of Welfare to who they call social services. Social service, a welfare department. I remember coming home to my rented apartment in Queens, on Colden Street, if I remember. I had no furniture. I couldn't afford it. I had a mattress on the floor, and I had orange crates for lamp tables. I go to work the next day, and I had a new welfare client, they call him a client, on the Upper West Side. And so she said to me, okay, write down $250 for a sofa, $125 for 2 side tables, $125 for the bed, 2 lamps. I said, wait a minute. I don't have those things. That I'm a college graduate. She said, well, a civilized person must have a sofa, 2 tables, an armchair, a coffee table, a bed. I said, but I'm civilized and I can't afford it. She said, well, I'm sorry, that's the way the system is. That's when I awakened to the fact that we were living in a welfare state. That was the beginning of the education of the young Michael Savage. And that's how I became a realist in my politics. It wasn't through a textbook. It was from Real Life 101. Back in a minute. Welcome back to the Savage Nation. I want to talk about energy for a minute because we all want more energy, right? Well, unfortunately, fatigue often gets in the way. Everyone feels it, even for everyday activities. And it seems to get worse every year. And here's why. When you're 20, your body has a natural ability to maintain healthy circulation. But by age 40, that ability decreases by 50%, and that leaves you feeling what? Tired. So you can do something to increase that youthful natural circulation and fight fatigue, and that's why I recommend you drink Super Beets. Super Beets promotes the body's own natural ability to produce healthier circulation. For increased energy and stamina all day long, only Super Beets is made from beets grown to exacting standards and then concentrated into superfood crystals. So listen to me. If you want to increase your own natural energy, you call 1-800-481-0504, or please go to SavageLovesBeats.com. That's SavageLovesBeats.com. With your first order, you're going to get another 30-day supply of Super Beets free and indicator strips to see if it's working, and it does. And you're going to get free shipping. Call 800-481-0504. Go to SavageLovesBeats.com. Okay, Will on WBOB in Jacksonville, one of my favorite cities on earth. What's on your mind, Will?
So you were talking about phrases or words that you don't want to hear. For me, it's and not to mention or needless to say. Every time it starts with those,
You know what I like? Listen to talk shows to say to be perfectly honest. How many of them say to be perfectly honest? What does that mean? They're not honest most of the time?
Yeah, I had somebody saying that to me today, and I'm just, why do I want to listen to you if you have to say it?
Yeah, or how about someone who says to you, to tell you the truth? What do you mean, most of the time you don't?
It seems that way.
So for the 9th consecutive year, Americans say whatever is the most annoying word or phrase used according to a Marist poll. Other words or phrases that people object to are fake news, no offense but, the word literally, and you know what I mean. You don't like needless to say and not to mention, correct?
That's correct, sir. I hate to hear those.
Well, not to mention the fact that God, faith, and reason is on the way to you. I will mention it, so stay on the line. 855-407-282 is the phone number. We're talking about sex, drugs, and rock and roll, I guess. When you think about it, we are talking about sex, drugs, and rock and roll, aren't we, in our own little way? In our own little way. No one called yet to give us the insight on being a housekeeper and a valet to the rich and famous. And our prominent Upper East Side couple is offering 2 people $150,000 a year to cook, clean, and run errands for them. What a list of things they have to do. Wow, I would never take that job. And a Johns Hopkins psychiatrist, top of his field, says transgender is a mental disorder and sex change is biologically impossible. I guess he won't be allowed on MSNBC, who believe everything that's crackpot is true and everything that's true is false, and that up is down and that there's collusion. There's collusion between Trump and Russia for sure to those at MSNBC, but no collusion between those on MSNBC and lies. No collusion whatsoever. Middle class to get 23% of tax cuts for individuals on the GOP bill. North Korea. Whatever happened to North Korea? 4 weeks ago we were at war with them. Now it's gone. How did that war end? I thought we were going to, any day Guam or Hawaii were going to disappear. How did it go away so fast? What, he came to his senses, Kim Jong mentally ill? I don't know. KLIF, Dallas, Texas, line 4. You are up, Mike, in Dallas. What's on your mind?
Hello, Dr. Savage. One of the words that bug me a lot is nuclear.
Yeah, oh, that's George. That was Bush. Nuclear.
Yeah, and five-star generals, for crying out loud, cannot pronounce.
How do they say nuclear? Nuclear. Why can't they say nuclear? Why is that a hard word?
I don't know. That's the way it's spelled.
How could a president of the United States have said nuclear? Nuclear.
No.
For years.
I agree. That I can understand, a few average common folk. But when it comes from five-star generals and the commander-in-chief,
come on now. Donald Trump never said nuclear. He could say nuclear. I mean, it was George Bush who said nuclear.
Oh, I've heard nuclear even from scientists on science.
Well, I don't know what that is. That's an interesting thing. Why do people say that? Well, I'm going to send you, there's only 4 shopping days till Christmas, and I don't know if you've done it yet, but I'm sending you God, Faith, and Reason to put under that tree to put God back in Christmas. House forced to revote on tax cuts. No Dems. Senate tonight. Wake up, America. Welcome back to the Savage Nation. We have so much to be thankful for in this country. I wish you people knew how good we have it. Even if we're poor, we're living better than most kings lived in most of the world through the centuries. How they got such hatred for the nation is not beyond me. I know how it happened. The minds were poisoned by the media moguls who live off dissent and hatred. So today we move into hour 3. We're talking about new topics. So I'm going to give you another peek behind the curtain. In the last hour, I told you it was a quarter to the carrot. For those of you who are following the show, you know what I was meaning by that. It's actually it was a quarter to the eggplant. The second hour is the eggplant in that little clock I fixed. The carrot is hour number 3, but I'll tell you more about that later. I may actually put it up on Facebook and Twitter, a picture of my vegetable clock that I fixed this morning in order to just have some fun focusing on fixing clocks by getting a new electric movement for $7.99 and saving something that would have been thrown in the garbage. I'm a guy who saves things. I like old things. I guess you could say I'm an antiquarian in that regard. The preservation of things in the past is a very important part of our present, especially in a throwaway society where people don't even know how to save a pair of shoes. I remember a guy called me last week who said he's from Italian family, New York. Grandfather was a shoemaker. Remember that call? He said if he'd go visit his grandparents, they would look at his shoes. If they needed soles, the grandfather would literally take his shoes and put a pair of soles on them in the house at a dinner. It was amazing to listen to that story. What a different time it really was. So I'm going to give you a little peek behind the screen for a moment before I go back to those topics. I'll bring up some new ones. I'm in different broadcast studios generally, but there's one I like the most. It's where I spend most of my time, and it was out of action for 6 weeks. The telephone lines, meaning the ISDN lines, were not working. Then there were the fires up in Sonoma, Napa, and we couldn't get AT&T out here. It's all fixed, and been running like for a week, and I love it. I never want to leave this place. I'm very content here. The dog is sleeping under the desk. Little old Teddy's down there. And it's where I feel most comfortable. So I have objects in every studio. If I ever could collect all the objects I have from all my different studios and put them in one place, it'd be a virtual Savage Museum. But in this particular studio, I'm going to read you the titles of the books that I keep right next to my broadcast desk. You ready? The Holy Scriptures, the Old Testament, with 300 Post-its in it. I'm not saying I'm religious particularly, but I also have the Daily Prayer Book with a lot of Post-its in it. 9.5 Mystics, The Kabbalah Today by Herbert Weiner. The True Believer by Eric Hoffer. A Pocket History of the World. Plato's Republic. I'm pulling the books out at random. The Teaching of Buddha. The Doors of Perception in Heaven and Hell by Aldous Huxley. The New Pocket, Roget's Thesaurus. Sorry. 30 Days to a More Powerful Vocabulary, something we had to read in high school in my day. It seems now that the morons who are prominent in the media try to spend 30 days to a less powerful vocabulary, trying to say the F word in as many conjugations as they can to get a better role in a record company. Then there's the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, the Latin and English Dictionary. That's a great one. And the Spanish-English-Spanish Dictionary. And here's one I really love. I don't use it much. The Concise Etymological Dictionary of the English Language by Skeet, Oxford University Press. I've had that for years. When you look up the derivation of words, I always like roots of words. We don't realize that words are so powerful. Words can heal, words can kill. Words can really hurt, can't they? Think about the people who hurt you with a single word or one word. One word can keep a person from hurting themselves, steering them in the right direction. It's amazing how plastic our minds and souls really are. And that leads us almost back to all the questions of the day, which is the use of marijuana, the overuse of marijuana, how people are starting to think it's a health food. They don't understand that it's a drug like so many others. Don't argue with me and say it's better than alcohol. That's not the point. I'm not arguing for you to go out and get a drink. That's like an absurd argument to say it's better than alcohol for you. Well, that's not the point. I'm not telling you to just use alcohol. That's not my point. I'm warning you about the dangers. You're all in love with marijuana now. You're in love with it, You have any idea how you're being brainwashed into thinking it's good for what ails you? What a nostra marijuana has become? How many people are stoned on this garbage all day long? But I don't even want to talk about it anymore. You want to ruin your mind, go ahead. What do I care what you do with your brain? 855-407-282. Here's a little legal story. You know how much I love lawyers. Trustee ready to distribute $584 million to Madoff customers. The liquidation trustee for Bernie Madoff's failed securities firm told a New York federal bankruptcy court Monday that he's ready to distribute more than $584 million to investors who fell victim to Madoff's Ponzi scheme, bringing the total amount that will have been paid out so far to about $11.4 billion. I wonder what the lawyer made on it. How come they always make out like bandits? Answer. Because they are bandits, and they make out like bandits. That's all. Trustee rent. So $584 million. How much did he get? Mr. Picard, Irving Picard. Securities Investor Protection Act trustee Irving Picard asked the bankruptcy court for approval of the payout. Oh, look, someone had to do it, so his firm made a fortune off doing it, but the others are getting some money back here and there. I never invested with Bernie Madoff. I never had access to him, nor did I want it, nor would I have trusted a sleazebag like him. I could read him from a mile away. I don't know how people fell for it. I don't understand it. Can't you tell con men when you meet them? Don't you have an inherent ability to read con men? Madoff stank to high heaven of a con man. There are so many giveaways. It's unbelievable to me. What are people with that naive? They'd kill themselves. And the more they say, no, the fund is closed. That's the first giveaway, is when the guy who owns the fund says, I'm sorry, you can't get in. You know you're going to get fleeced. You know, that's because everybody wants to join an exclusive club that they're locked out of. So, shall I give you other tips? Not really. I'm not in the mood. I'll take some calls. 855-407-282 is the phone number. We were talking about the most annoying words or phrases, including whatever, why the GOP tax plan to repatriate offshore profits may flop. CBS News covered that. And they refer back to a one-time tax holiday on overseas profits 13 years ago in the 2004 American Jobs Creation Act, which at the time temporarily cut taxes on repatriated profits to 5.25% from the former 35%. So you say, wow, that must have boomed the economy. Well, 9,700 companies took advantage of the tax break, and they brought back $312 billion. 15 companies led by Pfizer, Merck, Hewlett-Packard accounted for 52% of the repatriated money. But did it produce hiring? No. According to the study, instead of expanding operations or hiring, companies at the time tended to use the money to buy back shares of their own stock, purchases that disproportionately benefit wealthy investors who are less likely to spend any extra income. It had almost no payoff to the economy, said Adam Looney, senior fellow in economics at the Brookings Institution. A Senate subcommittee report concluded, in fact, that 10 of the 15 companies that repatriated the most money actually cut jobs after the tax holiday. Pfizer slashed 10,000 jobs in 05 and 06. Merck slashed 7,000. And Hewlett-Packard 14,500. So for those of you who are thinking, oh, great, all these big companies are going to bring back the money now because Trump's lowered the amount they're going to, why don't you look at the history of this and understand that if this bill really had merit, they would have put teeth in it, which said we're going to lower the taxes to a very low amount so you can bring the money back. But the caveat is you're signing a contract that says you must spend X percent of the money you bring back in job creation in America. But it's not in that bill. So, it's like a little smoke and mirrors here for those of you who want to know the truth behind the statement, which is what I try to specialize in, which is the truth behind the statement rather than just the propaganda in front of the statement. Edward Kleinbard, professor at the University of Southern California's Gould School of Law, said, the experience from the 2004 tax holiday suggests that most of this money will be distributed to shareholders not invested in U.S. business assets. So, believe who you want, but the results can be studied in the past, and I suggest you look at the reality rather than the propaganda. This is the Savage Nation. I'll be right back. It is 21 minutes after the eggplant on the Savage Nation. That's going to become like a fun joke with me. Remember yesterday we were talking about the train wreck, and there was an allegation that the Antifa people put concrete on the tracks, and that suddenly got dropped. Now the engineer was speeding. I don't know what to believe. Which part of who's lying about what? Do you actually think we would be told if it was terrorism? The government would sweep it under the rug. Any government wants to make themselves look impotent. All powerful and not impotent. So I don't know what to believe. Yesterday I talked about 4chan. I called them nonpartisan hackers who expose BS. And I don't know what they're saying about it now. They're calling me Uncle Mike on 4chan now. I like that. Anonymous is calling me Uncle Mike. Uncle Mike just mentioned it again. We nonpartisan hackers who expose BS now. Go, hackers, go. There's so much in the news, I don't even want to do the news, to be honest. So I'm sitting here with during the break, I picked up Skeet's Concise Etymological Dictionary of the English Language. I think I'm going to take it on vacation and read it on the beach. What if you found a guy sitting on a beach under an umbrella reading expiate, expire, explain, expletive, explicate, explicit, explode, exploit, explore, exponent, export, expose, exposition, expostulate, expound, express, yes ma'am, can I help you, expulsion, expunge, expurgate, exquisite, extant, ecstasy, extend. Would you think the guy's weird for reading a etymological dictionary on the beach? I think so. I don't actually read on the beach for two reasons. One, I never sit on the beach. And two, I don't read on the beach because I respect my eyesight and I really avoid the sun. But nevertheless, it's an interesting idea for a character in a movie. I guarantee you some film writer is going to pick this one up and throw it in a script of some weird guy sitting and reading a dictionary on the beach. You talk about ADD, man. Wow. Confessions of Housekeepers and words that you find grating. What words do you find grating? Here we go. Jim on WLOB Radio. Jim, which word or phrase bothers you the most?
At the end of the day.
Oh. You mean in the middle of colloquial discussion, someone says, listen, Jim, at the end of the day, that kind of thing?
They'll say it 2 or 3 times in one conversation. And
what about the people? What about the people in radio say, to be perfectly honest, or to tell you the truth? It means what? They're lying most of the time?
I think they're stalling for time.
They're stalling for time. That's interesting. How do people stall for time? How do they stall for time in radio? Or how do they ad-lib in stalling for time? How about dead air? That's a big famous one. It's like simply dead air. 10, 15, 12. Count the dead air. How much dead air do you ever find in my show? Almost zero. I compress my thoughts or I wouldn't do the show. The day I have to use dead air or coughing to cover up blank spaces, I definitely will get off the radio. And I'll start reading dictionaries on the beach. Jim, I'm sending you a book. If you name the title, you get it. What's the title of my book?
God, Faith, and Reason.
You got it, my friend. You're a prince. You're a prince of communications. A prince of communications. That's all. Wow. Should I read a 4-year-old's view of God? No, we did that. Does God exist? That's your business. What do people do who don't believe in God and they're suffering at the end of their life? Who do they turn to? I don't even know what they turn to. Do you know that I have a chapter in this book entitled Rabbi in a Brothel, a Fable? Oh, yes. There's some early writings in here. And I quote Leviticus on the side, thou shalt not take vengeance nor bear any grudge against the children of thy people, but thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. I am the Lord, Leviticus 19:18. So the character says, either become a rabbi or open a brothel in Borneo. That's what my choices are. I had reached the ultimate cul-de-sac in my misbegotten existence. Staying on this road is decay, disease, and death. Straight ahead, I'd rather become a rabbi or open a brothel. She said to him, both would be closer to God than your life. It's a very interesting fable in God, Faith, and Reason that you would never expect to be in such a book. This is not a goody two-shoes book. This is not what you'd expect. It's not an evangelist's book. Let me see if there's anything funny in here that I can read to you. Nah, I don't think so. It's for you to read. Go to a bookstore and read it. You'll see what I'm talking about. It's filled with stories, interesting stories. How about I want to read a page. I do want to read a page. Oh, this is when I was going through the atheistic phase. And I had my character say this, which is why the original book of the Jews was now read only by illiterate fools who, by circumstance or genetic dysfunction, believed the words had been dictated from heaven and inscribed in stone. Probably a collection of constipated poets, failed jewel hustlers, bankrupt sandal makers, whoremongers past their prime, child molesters, animal torturers, and other biblical-age riffraff thought the bridge driver as he now approached the South Tower nearing the toll booths into the city. I had one of my characters say that. Come on, you got to admit it's funny. It's cynicism. I had a toll booth taker say that as a character on page 223. Would you ever expect that in God, Faith, and Reason? You hear a book like this, oh, God, Faith, and Reason, you think of me like a preachy, sensitive, evangelical kind of preachy book. It isn't. It's one man's whatever. One man's odyssey. I just used it, you see. I wanted to grate you. Dude, I just wanted to grate you. I just wanted to grate you. Which is why the original book of the Jew. I don't mean that, by the way. That's my character. I want to speak about religion for a minute. You know, I'm not a particularly organized religion guy. I so respect people who are, though. I don't want you to get the wrong impression of me. If it were not for the people who were orthodox in their religion, there would be no religion at all. They are the ones who keep the entire traditions alive, whether it be Christian or Jewish. So we have to respect them even though we are not them. They keep it alive. With the impulses of a not-so-ordinary man and the personality of a born tyrant, our bridge traveler to nowhere had no intention of spending his life dressed in black. He was hurt by God, so he will become a priest, was a saying he grew up on. But could he not climb a tree so high and see so far as to bring back to earth for all to see God's vision for a perfect South? Could he not somehow fulfill his brother's lost lot in other than a formal priestly way by rescuing healing plants, for example? Oh, how impossible his quest of the alternate priest became, to prove to God, if not to man, that you worshipped him, but in your own way, to do so without edifice or pageant, to sing his praises in silence, to bow down to him without moving, to follow his commandments without following them, had our running priest become a Buddhist. A horn warned the fog. A ship slipped the gate. Images of Bob and his generation looking forward to the shore crossed his mind. I'm on a bus going to Fort Cronkite. It comes to the end of the line. The driver says, everybody off the bus. I sit still. Okay, off the bus. I ain't getting off, I tell him. It's too windy on the beach. For June in San Francisco, we're having August weather, but worse. The product of Saddam's oil fires last year, vectors of wind out of control. The Muslim wins again. For just 100 years, remember, in just 100 years, our cunning Arab cousins took an unknown local cult of the book and swept 2/3 of the world. He gets out of his driver's seat. He comes to the back of the bus where I'm sitting next to two old ladies, and he says, look, he says, you've got to get off the bus. I ain't going. He's got a half-shaved head, an earring, 3 rings on each finger, and he's a bus driver. One word leads to another. Listen, I'm going to smoke, and you've got to get off the bus. Well, I told him it's illegal. Get off the bus and smoke with the rest of the numbskulls. I'm not getting off in this wind. Wind, Hasim, screws everybody's mind. Ions, pollen, mites, viroids into people's minds, sweeps protective cullens from the skin, upraises particles unseen, stripping people. Wind is death, according to the Japanese. Wind, the Russians think it brings illness, as do the Chinese. Not a race on earth welcomes it, yet wind is the great pollinator without which all screws itself. Wind, the world itself upsets. So Bob stays on the bus with the two old ladies, one asking the other, what did he say? Not comprehending the bus driver or seeing his earring or shaved head or attitude, the hostile driver smokes a cigarette. I'm reading from Rabbi in a Brothel, which is a fable inside God, Faith, and Reason, the most unexpected piece of the book, which I thought I would treat you with right now. And a little bit more, so you get a little taste of what's in here. Could the warnings and exhortations of Job compare with Disney? Could Jeremiah compete with the evening news? Look what the New York Times had become. One power-mad psychopath after another paraded throughout, with all the details of his or her personal wealth displayed, so as to render the moderately successful reader impotent and hopeless by the time the sports page was reached. Could this epic of the Sulzbergers be compared with Ecclesiastes? No, of course not. Which is why the original book of the Jews was now read only by illiterate fools, who by circumstance or genetic dysfunction believed the words had been dictated from heaven and inscribed in stone, probably a collection of constipated poets, failed jewel hustlers, bankrupt sandal makers, whoremongers past their prime, child molesters, animal torturers, and other biblical age riffraff, thought the bridge driver as he now approached the south tower of the Golden Gate Bridge nearing the toll booths of the city. He glanced at the tiny fortune cookie scotch taped to the dashboard of his old two-door Bronco. You are an angel. Beware of those who collect feathers. Come on, the writing is good. Give me a break here. No one can write like this in this country. By now it's a private comedy. I'm no angel, but I've lost most of my feathers mostly trying to fly, he mused. Every time I've been given a chance I could soar like an eagle, it's been the trying to fly where the real losers live. Those failed writers who became agents, now all menopausal and ready to give to the UJA after years supporting the PLO. Those tight-lipped WASP academics whose guilt made them hire the Jews after the Holocaust, the academic Jews who chose to exile any hint of rebellion in their Jewish male descendants, welcoming instead the women and other minorities they thought they could bamboozle. And the bamboozle they did, running every racket in the universities known to the mafia within the halls of academe, encouraging all the while the debate over affirmative action so they could continue their plundering unnecessary research funds, conducting excessive animal experimentation, molesting their young students, holding grandiose conferences modeled on the tools of those government bureaucrats they did business with. Look what the universities have become, he thought, plunderer of graduate students' discoveries in labor, plunderer of all lost ideals everywhere and in all time since Abraham tried to slay Isaac, but was saved by a counter-hallucination. A generation of incompetents not seen in the history of the Republic, incompetents who had created their own fields of study to justify their lack of productive scholarship in the real fields of learning, those fertile fields which blossomed with a flora so vibrant and diverse, now reduced in size and offering to almost nothingness. Leo Tolstoy wrote somewhere that those who believe their religion is greater than God will believe that their sect is greater than their religion and end up by believing that they are greater than their sect. On and on it went as he drove over the Golden Gate Bridge. See, I began as a writer, so you're going to get a little bit of the writer in here, not the polemicist. Now, my favorite piece of God, Faith, and Reason, for those of you who don't want to buy the book for whatever the reason is, maybe you don't have the money or you don't, whatever, I'm going to give it to you for free. It's my Christmas holiday. I have a few minutes now to read you the favorite last pages of the book about a funeral. An old guy who is dying, and I didn't know them that well. And then the guy is, here we go. I'm speaking to, in this case, the character is speaking to a guy who he knew, who was a bit of a Nazi. But he and a Nazi got along. They argued all the time, but they got along. He wasn't a hateful Nazi. He was just a Nazi by inclination. And he respects people who are real for what they are, because at least he can talk to them. They don't hide who they are. And he had saved this Nazi from cancer by taking him out of the VA hospital and putting him on the Linus Pauling vitamin C program. And he was cured. He pulled him back from the diagnosis of lymphoma. So he goes and visits this guy in an SRO hotel in San Francisco, the character does, and he says, his name is Bob, the Nazi. He says, Bob, I went to a funeral last week for my friend Joel's father. You want to hear about it? I almost called you to come. They didn't have too many friends. Bob nodded, sipped on his beer, and settled back to listen. One thing about his generation and his culture, they were good listeners. Joel's father, Murray, was 82, I began. He survived Auschwitz, where the German bastards cut 3 fingers from his right hand with a saw just for sport. I watched Bob's face. It was, as I expected, guarded. After all, I had met him in a bar about 12 years before when I had stood up to his anti-Semitic ravings. We quickly became good but guarded pals, he needing his Jew and I my Goy. Though he stood over 6'5" and was made of lean English muscle, I had threatened to kill him if he didn't shut up. Now, I'm only 5'7", but I'm broad enough and my eyes relay protons of dark danger. I've been mistaken for an Italian in Italy, a Spaniard in Spain, an Arab in Morocco, a Jew in Brooklyn. The reason I say I've been mistaken for a Jew is because I don't behave like one, at least those I know here in America. Maybe I was born to lead a tank brigade in Israel or a mob in Vegas. All I know is that I've led Little League in the suburbs and a few expeditions to collect plants in the Fiji Islands and been damn proud of it. But my eyes are those of a saint when calm, a killer when agitated. It's in my blood. I think, this murderous rage. Either through eye power or the work of saving angels, I've talked my way out of death more than once. So Bob shut his mouth that night many years ago, and as I've said, he tends to harbor certain Nazi sentiments. So when I told him about Murray's mutilated hand, I wasn't surprised at his lack of immediate pitying sounds. But I like a challenge, so I went on. Murray never cried about his hand, I told Bob. He came to America with Florence, who he met somewhere over there, and had a family, namely Joel. He was full of life, this Murray. He was a big drinker. He loved women. He beat his son with a strap, but he was a big personality. Bob nodded. I think the anti-Semite in him liked the never cried and beat his son parts of Murray, so I proceeded with my funeral story. I had lost touch with Joel for a few years. His wife threw him out for beating her and at least one of their daughters, and he was in one of his episodic hidings, this time from the sheriff's department. They were after him for his house and all his earnings to give to his greedy wife. Somehow I heard his father, Murray, had cancer and was dying. I called his mother and went over a few days later. We brought a bag of groceries, French bread, a pound of sliced turkey, some wine, some vegetables, and a quart of milk. The usual stuff you bring when someone's sick, poor, and housebound. Florence and Joel greeted us at the door of their little one-bedroom apartment on Van Ness Avenue. I always liked it there. They were really nice people. They reminded me of my parents. Having been in the antiques business like my deceased father, Benny, the place was filled with oversized, high-quality furniture and paintings. Murray was in a bathrobe, in a gigantic English armchair, shrunken but beautiful in a way. He pulled me close and said, Michael, I remember when you took me and Joel over there to Berkeley 20 years ago. I know you almost 20 years, holding tightly onto my hand. That's not a short time, Michael. You took me to a bar after on Telegraph. Those were the good times. Now are the bad. Bob, I prodded, you hear this? I extend one good deed 20 years ago, and this guy remembers. It's like one of the best moments of his life. This one drink. So he goes fast into the hospital where he insists they let him out, probably to die at home, and 3 or 4 days later, boom, it's over. Like that? Joel told me he had been sick most of the night. Vomiting, probably those toxic chemochemicals. He forces himself up and says, Joel, she's there on your left, the angel of death. Joel gets scared. He says, Pop, there's nobody here but me and Mom. Murray stares at the big chair across the small room. To your right, Joel, on the couch. He's here with her. He stands up, starts to walk across the room, and collapses. I could see that even the anti-Semite Bob is tearing up, wiping the tears from his face. Listen, you racist bastard, I said to him, looking at that hole in the ground with Murray's casket so bare, and hearing the rabbi's ancient chant, and watching the young Mexican gravediggers. Moved by that chant, I became reminded of my own hole waiting. I never knew where I wanted to live, I whispered to Joel's friend from Israeli intelligence at the graveside, and I sure don't know where I want to die. He looked at me and said, we never know where we're going to die. He reminded me with a 70s rocker's cackle and grin. That's in God, Faith, and Reason. It was supposed to be the end of the book, but I changed it to another part of the book. This is Michael Savage. I'll be back in a minute. I am in a major league weird place right now. I got to tell you, I mean, my mind went so far away from this radio show and reading that to you because I wrote that so long ago. I had to get into that state of mind to write it. I wrote it a long time ago, and I'm not even here right now. My mind is there. I got to tell you, I'm in a complete different state. I don't even feel like going on with the show. Thank God it's almost over. It's like a quarter to the carrot. It'll be over soon. But I remember that funeral. I didn't like it very much. Funerals aren't fun to begin with, but that guy had suffered so much on this earth. He had nothing in his life that was good. Nothing went right in his life. Just the end was as black as it gets. And there was no redemption. There was no redemption at that grave. Nothing. There was nothing. Zero. It was as empty as a vulture's heart. Karen, KVOR up in Colorado, line 4. Go ahead, please. Did I hit the wrong button?
Dr. Savage, I'm so happy to be talking with you. I love that story, and especially that you created a highlight for that man, and you didn't even know it. It sort of guides us day by day.
Oh, you mean that one kind thing of taking him for a drink 20 years before?
One kind.
It's very interesting how one kindness will last in a person's life when they have so little.
And sometimes it lasts when they have so much.
Well, no, it's a very interesting point, which is one good deed can last a lifetime and beyond. I guess that's what you're saying.
Remember, shouldn't we?
Well, I guess that's the point of my having included that sentimental anecdote in God, Faith, and Reason. Was in a certain way I was saying one good deed. I don't even know why I put it in. I thought it fit, but what I was saying was, I suppose, and you're making me understand it, is that I'm saying one good deed can have a profound effect on another person's life.
It's like going to church for me when I hear that story.
But, Karen, how many of my listeners actually heard that story? Talk radio is not a medium for literature. I don't even know if literature is possible in this world today. I tend to think that the world of literature is dead, and the idea of literature is over completely. That unless it's so highly politicized, people aren't even going to read it. You got to remember, I wrote that piece of that book many years ago when it was unpublishable. And the only reason it has seen the light of print in this best-selling book, God, Faith, and Reason, is because my publisher has had such success with me with my other books that she let me do whatever I thought needed to be done to make this book complete. And so she said, whatever you want to do, it's your book. And so, would a publisher publish a piece of literature like that today? I don't even know. I don't even know if there's an audience for it, is what I'm saying. Can an audience even receive poetry anymore? I mean real poetry of the kind I just read on this program, as opposed to the drivel that passes for poetry today. I'm going to get off the phone here. I don't want to spend too much time on this, because if I do, I'm going to get distracted myself. You want me to take some calls now? I have 1 minute and 38 seconds left. We've been talking about some weird topics today, political, spiritual, financial. I read from God, Faith, and Reason. And I have avoided playing some of the great sound that we have. But maybe that'll be done tomorrow, which is my last show until the end of the year, till the beginning of the new year in January. And I'm very much looking forward to it. As I said to my guest earlier in the last hour, I'm hoping to meet some interesting people over the weekend, including one that's very interesting to America and the world. And the GOP tax plan to repatriate offshore profits. I explained to you this has been tried before, and this tax holiday was done in 2004 under the American Jobs Creation Act, and it yielded almost nothing. The only beneficiaries were the companies, which used the money to buy back shares of their own stock, and the average person had no payoff. I expect the same thing to happen this time, because the only way it would ever be different is if Congress wrote in the bill that we're going to let you repatriate the money at almost no taxes if, in writing, you agree to spend 90% of the money on building factories and creating jobs. That didn't happen. Only 4 shopping days left to purchase the literature called God, Faith, and Reason for Christmas. Put God back under the tree. Thank you and good night.